I'm Jeremy. I'm an addict. It's an honor and it's a privilege to be asked to introduce our speaker tonight, Barry D. I've known Barry for a couple of years now. He is my sponsor. He has an NA sponsor who works NA steps. I work NA steps with my sponsor. Just this past year, we've traveled Nashville, Baton Rouge, Hattiesburg, together in the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, be it speaking engagement, be it workshops, be it conventions. Not only is he my sponsor, he's my friend. He's my mentor. Barry D has put forth a great deal of effort in working with me because I'm one of them addicts that sometimes have to get back up and make that walk of shame. He's always there for me with the hug and some advice. But I love this man. I've heard him speak before. I always get something out of it. So, without any further ado, I give y'all Barry D from Oxford, Mississippi.
Yeah. But I got Razorback red on tonight. I thought since I was coming to Arkansas, I might as well at least put on the colors, right? I'm an addict named Barry, and I am really grateful to be clean tonight, standing up here. It's always good coming here. This is just such a beautiful convention. This is my fourth one in a row. I missed the first one. I'm like, man, why couldn't I have made the first one? You know, I'm always missing out on the first one, you know, unless it was the first hit. But like I missed the first Delta area convention, but I've made the last, 8 or 9, whatever it is, I don't know. My first one I made, I had 5 months clean, and that's where I met my sponsor. He wasn't my sponsor then, and he couldn't make it this weekend. He's just got some stuff going on physically, you know. But I call him, and no matter what's going on, he just gives me hope. You know, with all this stuff happening with him, and just the faith gives me faith. You know, I've had some great sponsors in this fellowship. And if it wasn't for sponsorship, I would not be here tonight. Hands down. I don't know how people do it without that. I really don't. I know I can't work the steps by myself because I'm the last person I used with. So it wouldn't be a good idea to listen to me. So I need to run those things by other people. You know, it doesn't really matter what it is. I need to talk to another addict first. You know, I know how to get up in the morning and take a shower and go to work. You know, that's gotten a little bit simpler over time. But before I got here, it wasn't like that. I never could keep a job. And I've been employed ever since I've been clean. I've had a couple of different jobs. You know, today I have a career. And it's because of the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous that I have that today. By sticking and staying and not using no matter what, you know, I'm able to stand up here today. So I don't know what I'm going to share. I never do. I always think of some good stuff, you know, along the way. And then like 2 seconds later, I'm on another tangent. So I talked to a guy that's been clean for over 35 years. He just celebrated 35. Billy Y from Oxford. And I asked Billy, I said, Billy, because he does a lot of stuff. I said, what do you do before you go speak? He says, well, I pray for the need to impress to be removed before I get up there. So I went to the bathroom a while ago to do that, and someone had just went in there before me, so the prayer was short. If you know what I mean. Yeah, I got that one out the way and come on back out here so I could breathe. But yeah, and I'm not a comedian. Sometimes things just come out like that. But you know, my story is probably not much different than anybody sitting in the room. You know? Maybe some of the antics were, the things I did to get one. Then again, I don't think it's that much different. I come from, I was born in Louisiana, in case y'all couldn't tell. Speaking of that, I used to live in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and a friend of mine here tonight, his sponsor's wife calls me the poser, because she knows I'm from New Orleans. But I would tell people I'm from Clarksdale, Mississippi, because that's where I lived. And she says, she dubbed me the poser at the, I think it was the 3rd Delta Convention. So every time she sees me, she calls me the poser. But I'm not posing tonight. Looking back, I believe I had the disease of addiction way before I ever picked up a drug. Because there's a saying in Narcotics Anonymous, like, I don't know if I was born an addict, but the first time I picked up an addict was born. Because I remember the first time I used. And I remember it was like the 4th of July, like up here. When that thing went off, it's like I had to have some more. And it didn't matter what it was. I wasn't one of those, like, anyway, never mind about all that, but I just like drugs, man. I never met one I didn't like. Like, each time I met a new one, I fell in love again. Like, this is the one. Shit. When it says the ends are always the same, well, the ends for me were always the same. Jails, institutions, and I was a walking dead man for a long time before I got here. Thank y'all for bringing me back to life. Because I was broken, spiritually just dead. No feelings. I remember when 911 happened. I was on the way to the clinic. Because that was one of my, magical formulas like the book talks about. And I remember I was in this little Chevette. It was given to me because I never could buy a car. And I was on the way to the clinic. And I remember it being on the radio, but I had no feelings about it. Like, I had to get to the clinic, man. Because that was the day I was ready for my 10 milligram increase. So I get to the clinic, and they told me they couldn't give me an increase because of what happened. I'm like, So I acted like a fool in the lobby. Y'all going to give me my 10. And they talking about what happened. I said, Dad, I don't care about that. I need my 10. And they said, we can't give you an increase. It's going to be probably a couple of weeks. And I wanted to blow the place up. But, what I'm getting at is that's where drugs took me. I had no feelings like I don't know for how long. Long time. Way before that. Man, I'm glad I can feel today. And I can cry today. I couldn't cry when I got here. I didn't know how. I had forgotten. I don't ever remember crying until I got to Narcotics Anonymous, actually. I was just dead, man. But, I mentioned that I believe I had a disease before I picked up because when I was like, I got molested a couple of times, like when I was a little kid, like 5 and 6. So I remember like shutting down emotionally, not being able to talk about that stuff. Because I don't think that's something you sit at the breakfast table and talk about. I know it wasn't in my household. Because my dad was always working. He was a locomotive engineer for KCS Railroad, so he was gone a lot. And my mom, God rest her soul, and I'll get into some of that later, but she stayed loaded all the time. Her drug of choice was alcohol, but she had them little mother's helpers in the cabinet. And I could tell when she was on the little mothers, you know, the little helpers, because the slur would be a lot thicker. Stumbling around and, you know, I never wanted friends coming to my house because I never knew what was going to be there when I got there. But they always wanted to come by my house because we had all the food, because the friends, like my little friends on the street, their parents were out, whatever, so they liked to come by my house because we had food. And my mom loved to feed like everybody. You know, bring them over. I guess that's a Louisiana thing. I don't know. Y'all do a good job here too, though. I can't wait for tomorrow night. I was sharing that with them earlier, man. We're going to eat good tomorrow. Thank y'all for doing that too. It's great. But I remember being about 6, and my mom and dad said that I needed to get, I had a little leisure suit. Could you imagine a 6-year-old with a leisure suit like John Travolta, you know? And they said, you need to go put your leisure suit on. I said, what I need to put my leisure suit on for? They said, well, we're going to City Hall. I'm like, City Hall? What we going to City Hall for? Oh, your dad's going to adopt you today. I didn't know how to process that. My sister was cool with it. She was like 2 years older than me. Matter of fact, we're 1 day apart from being 2 years. But I remember then, like, what is this? But I'm going to tell you what I did that day. Here's where I know I was an addict, because I copped a resentment. And I hated that man. From that day forward until the day he died, November the 11th of 1995. There was nothing he could ever tell me from that point forward. I didn't want to hear it. I would shut that out, and I would have to do what he told, or, you know, you get your lick. But I just despised him. Couldn't stand him. You know? And I'll get into a little bit about the recovery process with that in a little bit. But that's a long time to carry a resentment. You know? That was in like 1967 when I got the resentment. Till 1995. I don't know how many, that's a lot. I never knew how to articulate myself. I was always real shy, real inward, just always felt alone. Always felt different. Like it's like I was always like either on the outside of a glass house looking in at everyone playing, or just walking through life, or I was on the inside looking out. All alone. It didn't matter how many people I was around. Today I don't feel alone, because the name of my home group is Never Alone, Never Again. And you thought NA stood for Narcotics Anonymous. I'm grateful to be clean. So, I just didn't know, man. So, I guess it was in the early 70s, 72, 73, my mom and dad decided that we were going to get out of Kenner. You know, if you're from Kenner, you say, Kenner, brah. And we moved to Destrehan, Louisiana, because we had to get away from, because it was getting quote unquote bad, you know. And that's where it started. That's where I got introduced to narcotics. And I remember chasing that thing, and chasing that thing, and chasing that thing. Like I never had a girlfriend. I wanted to get loaded. My friends had girlfriends and stuff, but shit, I was trying to go cop. Where can I get something? You know? I didn't even want one. I married drugs. And drugs married me. I thought that was the solution. You know, because I could be around people and be okay. But that solution almost killed me many times. Like, I think I quit counting overdoses at 13 of them. I just lost count. Now, it's not like I was trying to. That's just how I used. There was never enough. And it didn't matter. If I could get it in a fit, it was going up my arm. And I got introduced to all kind of goodies along the way. I got my first conviction at the age of 17. I thought it would be a good idea. I don't know why I thought they had drugs in a dentist's office. But I thought I could go in there and get something. So I scoped this place out. And I jumped the fence to the back of the backyard. And the glass was knocked out. It was like an invitation. I didn't have to like break in. I just had to climb over into the thing. But I didn't know they had these little things in there, these lasers. But I knew they were in there when they went off, because I got to stepping. Didn't find any drugs, by the way. But I got my first felony conviction at the age of 17, and that's an adult in Louisiana if you go into prison. So I got my DOC number then, and I still remember it today. It's 10-12-36. I don't ever want to forget what that number is, because I'm one hit away from going back. See, that's what I'm not confused about today. It's the first one that gets me. All this time, I didn't know that. But looking back, you know, it talks about our track record. Looking at my track record, for me today, my track record is a gold mine that I can tap into anytime, because all the evidence is there of what happens to me if I use. It's laid out for me already, because old Slick tries to talk to me sometimes. You know, and it's like today they got all these new things out that I never got to try. You know, I like bath salts. You can buy that shit over the counter and shoot it. Like, damn. But by the way, today I have 6 felony convictions. And I've served over 10 years in the state penitentiary in Louisiana. Life on the installment plan. In and out. In and out. In and out. You know, I did 40 months flat on one. 3 years on another one. 18 months on one. Not counting all the 9 months, 6 months, 3 months, 2 months. You know, I went to jail one time. They let me out that morning in Kenner, bro. And that evening, the same shift that booked me out booked me back in. But I never could connect the dots. How do you go to jail twice in the same day on the same shift and not know there's a problem? But the jailer, he looked at me in my eyes from across that glass. He said, "Mr. Doty, you have a serious drug problem." And I was like, "Let me tell you what happened." And what he told me was, "I don't want to hear that shit. Go tell it to them in there. Get your ass in the cell. You know where it's at." And that ink, I had to like let myself in. I knew what the ink was, the buzzer. But what I'm talking about is that's insane. But when you don't know, you don't know. I never heard of Narcotics Anonymous. They didn't talk about where I was in prison. They didn't talk about NA. I was always like what I was going to do when I got out. How good I was going to do this time. If you say this time, that means there's been times before. I never could connect the dots. I mean, I used drugs for 30 years. When I wasn't locked up, and if I could get him in there, I'd use him in there too. I remember getting out one time and I told him, guys, I'm going to go get me an 8-ball just to get it out of my system. But it hadn't been in my system for 3 years. But see, that thing was living like in there. It was already tricking me. Just get this one and it'll be it. But that's the one, like it talks about in recovery and relapse, it starts the deadly cycle all over again. I just didn't know it. So I can stand here and say today, since I've been clean, I have not even been pulled over. I haven't been to jail. I've kept a job, and that's a miracle, because I never could keep one. I was always getting fired because I wouldn't show up or something, especially if I had a little package. I wasn't going. I'd have someone call for me and tell them what was wrong because I couldn't make it. Because I worked offshore on them drilling rigs, cooking and baking. That was one of my ends in someone's house, because I'd go in there and cook for them real quick and throw down, and then they'd let me sleep on their couch. Then I'd start sweeping and mopping and cleaning the toilets. They'd like, oh, you can stay here. Until I stole from them. Then they put me out. Another addict put you out, you know. You got to go. And I did that for a long time too. You know. It's just part of it. You know, when it says we live to use and use to live, that was me. You know, I read this literature, man, is so me. Everything in it. Yep. You know, living skills are reduced to the animal level. Yep. Because that's how I was living. You know, like a stray dog from pillar to post. Whoever would take me in or give me a crumb. You know? And I've done some things that I'm very shameful for trying to get another one, you know. And I'm not proud of. But when that thing said, get up, it's time to start moving, I got up and started moving and did whatever I had to do to get one, you know. Damn, I'm so glad I don't have to do that today. You know, so grateful. I'm nervous too. I'm a little bit better. I like sitting on the other side of the podium. It looks different up here. You know? I don't know, man. Feels good to breathe. To be able to breathe and not looking over my shoulder. Who's coming? Because I was that addict, you know, with the couch and the love seat stacked on top of each other in front of the door, because they was coming. I just knew they were. I remember one night I looked like a little raccoon because I stayed in the peephole, and I saw someone, or I thought I saw someone breaking in my car, and I called the police. They come to investigate the break-in. And I gave a description. It was kind of vague, but I gave one. But I'm going to tell you, see, I never thought to think that they might want to look in my garbage can. Because I would throw the things like, you know, when I'm done, just chunk it right there, just whatever. And my second stripper wife was living with me at that time, named Cookie. I married 2 strippers from the same club. Louisa was the first one, this hot little thing from Honduras. And then Cookie, we'll get into that in a minute. But anyway, I asked her, and she saw them too. So I called them again. They showed up again. But that's, you know, the insanity of addiction, man. We both saw them. I think our descriptions were kind of both vague, so it's kind of shadowy like. I think y'all done that too, huh? I can tell. Y'all bobbing y'all's head like it's an Ozzy Osbourne concert. But, you know, I've been married 3 times. Twice in active addiction and once in recovery. I got out of the penitentiary in 1987. Really nowhere to go. So I was staying with these addicts. And he asked me if I wanted to go to the club with him. I'm fresh out the penitentiary. I want to go to the club. You know, I might get lucky tonight. And there she was. So, I don't know how, see, that was my dating experience. That's all I knew. I didn't know how to date. My second sponsor taught me, though. God rest his soul. So anyway, we went home, and same night, you know. You know what happened when we got home, but anyway. So I go back to prison. I catch another charge. I go back to prison. Another drug charge. I got 6 felonies. They're all drug convictions. Come on. I'm slow. I guess that's why I'm in a 12-step program, for that little extra help along the way, right? But I got out of prison, and I don't know what it was, but I had this bright idea when I got out that I was going to go back to that club just to see what they was doing. Now, I didn't know alcohol was a drug at that time. So, as long as I wasn't doing that other stuff, I was going to be okay. I wasn't okay, by the way. So I go to the club, and I had me a couple of goosenecks. So I had to go use the bathroom. You know what alcohol does you. So I'm making the corner, and there she was. She was laying on the pool table. One leg cocked up in the air, and one hand behind her head. And she said some magic words. She said, "What's your name?" I said, "My name's Barry. What's yours?" She says, "They call me Cookie." I said, "Cookie, can I buy you a drink, baby?" She says, "Yes, you can." And about 30 minutes later, I was tapping her on her shoulder and said, "You want to go get loaded?" See, I never could connect the dots that every time I drank, I made the block. Not sometimes, every time. I was going, get it. I know that today through doing step work. That was the insanity. You know? And you know what I never could figure out? I brought both of those home to meet Mom and Daddy, and they just didn't care for them. They just didn't, so I cut Mom and Dad loose. Shit, I just won't talk to y'all. And that's messed up, to do that to my parents. You know, but that's what drugs did me. You know, the disease of addiction had me cutting people off that all they ever tried to do was love me. But I would get mad if they ever tried to tell me something. You know, it talks about that rebellious nature. Yeah. So, needless to say, that didn't work either. Didn't work out too good. You know, the only thing we had in common was getting loaded. Nothing else. Zero. I stayed married to her for a while. You know how, but like hadn't seen her in years, but you're still married. Like in another state or whatever. And I remember filling out a job application. Are you married? I got, well, damn. Am I? But I had to check yes, because legally I was. Like, I've been married 8 years, man. That's like I used to tell people I worked offshore for 14 years. Don't that sound good? But see, I left out all the other parts, like when I was in prison. Because 14 sounds good. Probably about 6 altogether. The rest was, yeah, you know where I was at. Heartbreak Hotel. So, you know, in the end, when I found Narcotics Anonymous, I was living in Picayune, Mississippi, because my mother had finally put me out. Because, you know, don't most 41-year-old men live with their mother? This addict did. But I remember stealing the last $15 she had in her purse the night before. $15, man, and I hitchhiked like 20 miles to go get one. And the next morning, I got up, and she said, like, when am I going to get a job? And I hadn't worked in 3 years. Been living there, rent-free. You know, and I always, like, my food stamp card would all of a sudden get lost. I don't know what happened to it again, like every month. Because that was supposed to be my little payment for living there, you know. Louisiana Purchase. And I always said I would never do that. I'd never, like, give my card away for drugs. Shit. Keep using. Like I said, I would never rent my car out. Guess what? They brought it back and it was like tilted. Leaning. They jump in tracks and no telling what else they did in it. You know? But all those nevers. I've crossed a many a lines. It's kind of like, you know, when it talks at work time, why, you know, we watched other addicts do things. We said we'd never do them, and then we found ourselves doing those very things. I got bunches of those that I said I would never do. But at the end, she wouldn't stop. And I wasn't trying to hear that, get a job. I'm trying to get disability. I'm serious. I was working on SSI. I'm going to the doctor because I got a bad neck and a bad back. And I used to ride around with my MRIs and x-rays in the back seat just in case I see a doctor's office. I'm from out of town. I just moved here. You know the story. Yeah, I ride around with them in the back. That's crazy. But she wouldn't stop. And my mother had just had a 5-way bypass heart surgery. I'm going to tell you what drugs did to me. And she come in the kitchen, and I got a 10-inch chef's knife, and I put it to her throat. And I said, if you don't shut up right now, I'll kill you. That was, you know, I look at that now, how horrible. But no feelings. I just wanted her to shut up. I just wanted to get another one. She says, well, I'm calling the law. I said, well, call them. They can't make me leave. Shit, I've been here 3 years. I live here. Well, this is in, like, DeVille, Louisiana. 2 6'5", 300-pound pony-toe, big old wide chewing tobacco police pull up. Now, they talking to my mom. I'm thinking, when y'all going to come talk to me? I need to let y'all know what really happened. Well, they both walked up to me, and I'm kind of looking up at them because they're kind of big. And when it starts like this, it usually goes south because they said, Mr. Doty. They said, you can either get all your stuff packed up right now. Some of y'all are familiar with this word too. Or you can come with us. Now I knew what come with us means, because I went with them a bunch of times. So I gathered my stuff up and I left. I hitchhiked. I had nowhere to go. I hitchhiked to New Orleans. It's right before, the year before Katrina, there was another storm coming. Now I'm hitchhiking to New Orleans, like the lane I'm going, there ain't no traffic. On the other side is 4 deep. So, moving like a snail, and I'm going the other way. That's insane. The storm was coming to the storm. And then, couldn't stay there too long, so I moved to Picayune. Some friends took me in over there, well, some addicts took me in, and I met me a little friend in church. There she was. I spotted her across the room. And she enabled me almost to death, because she wasn't an addict. And I know how to play games. And I played them. But in the end, this January, it was January 23rd of 2006. They told me, they said either you can get out or you can go get some help. Now addict math computes that real quick. It's pretty cold in January. So I computed that like real fast and said, well, I guess I'll go get some help since y'all think I have a problem. So they put me on the phone with this treatment center, and I went outside on the phone. I wasn't going to talk to them around them. So I got outside, and the man asked me, it's like 8 o'clock in the morning. The man asked me, could you be in Clarksdale by 5 o'clock that evening? I said, man, there ain't no way. You know, it's about 4.5 hour ride. I could have been there. He says, well, what about 8 o'clock in the morning? This is a Tuesday. He said, that would be Tuesday morning. I couldn't get out of that one. I said, well, I think I can be there Tuesday morning. So I put the phone beside my body so he couldn't hear me going to tell them he needs me there tomorrow. I didn't tell him about today. They said, yeah, we can have him there in the morning for 8 o'clock. I said, good, I got me one more run. But what I didn't know is they already had my suitcase packed in the car. They said, we going now. I'm like, now? They said, yeah, now, get in. So I crawled, it's a SUV, I crawled in the back where the tire was at and covered up with a blanket. That's how bad I felt. But what I was really trying to do was manipulate them. Maybe they'll feel sorry for me one more time and stop and say, look, we're going to give you one more chance. Shit, they didn't stop. We went all the way to Greenwood. They didn't even stop they already had it filled up all the way. So the next morning I'm going get this help these people think I need. And on 49 from Greenwood to Clarksdale is nothing but fields, cotton fields. You know, I guess there's some soybean and a little corn. So addict brain's working. Overtime. All right. If they stop, I'm going to get out and run. Now, I don't know where I was going to run to, because there ain't nothing. If some of y'all been, y'all know. So I asked them, I said, well, look, could y'all stop to the store real quick? I need something to drink. They said, we ain't stopping until we get to the place. So we get to this place, right? And there's like 7 dogs out front, you know. And I'm like, what am I coming to? A zoo? Hey, but what I didn't know, see those dogs? Unconditional love. That's why they were there. They were the best therapists in the treatment center. Were the pets. because I could pet on them, and they would just let me love them, when in fact they were just loving me. But that day, I walked in this place, and they gave me a basic text of Narcotics Anonymous, and they told me some words I'd never heard in my life. They said, "You never have to use again." And you know what part of me believed them? Just for a second. That was January 24th of 2006, and that is my clean date. So that's 23 days, 11 months, and 8 years. And guess what? That's daily miracles, one day at a time. Sometimes 1 second at a time. Whatever it takes to get through whatever I'm going through. But I had never heard that. But I never heard of NA. And that same night, H&I comes in, carrying the message. And then I was there a couple of weeks, and they took me to this outside meeting called Mainline Recovery. Catchy name for addicts, huh? Mainline. But what I didn't know, that was the first group of Narcotics Anonymous in the state of Mississippi. Started in 1977 in the middle of a cotton field. I thought it would have started like in Jackson on the coast, But I didn't know that. And I remember my first meeting. There was a 2-year or 4-year celebration that night. But in the end, I pass out these key tags. And there were 6 of us there that were picking up those white key tags, those surrender key tags. It tells you where to do it on the front. It says NA and welcome. And they said if I ever forget how to stay clean, they say just flip the tag over, and it even gives us the solution just for the day. But I remember those 5 people stood up before me, and there was something inside of me saying, "Don't get up. You better not." Look what it was telling me. They're going to know. I'm in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. They're going to know. I didn't get there because everything was great. But I'm going to tell you what happened. There was this still little voice inside of me. It was very quiet and just like so loving. And it said, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." And I remember getting up, shaking, trembling. And it was probably from here to Mike, maybe, where they were passing out the key tags. But it looked like the Green Mile. Like the other end of the room. But I remember all this hooping and hollering and clapping and keep coming back. And that shit was echoing in my head. And I remember the lady who gave me my key tag. She had about 12 years clean, and I thought she wanted me, but... Because she hugged me and she said she loved me. She didn't want me. We laugh about that today. We're still good friends. Matter of fact, she told me that the first day she met me at that treatment center. My first day in there, she gave me this big old hug and said she loved me. So I knew 2 weeks later she wanted me. It says after coming to NA, we realized we were sick people. Boy, I'm really learning what that's about. The longer I stay here, yeah. But I remember they had a 2-year and a 4-year anniversary that night. But what got me was when I sat down, a dude got up behind me and picked up a 30-day tag. That blew my mind. I could not believe you could stay clean. See, them 2 years and 4 years was way over my head. But when that dude got up, see, after the meeting, people was up there around the 2 year. I ran outside. I had to go find that dude and ask him, "How'd you do it, bro? How'd you do it, man?" And he says, "I just didn't use it and I come here." I said, "I think I could do that." He gave me some hope, man. That this thing might even work for me. And I've been here ever since, man. I don't never I want to go back and live like how I used to live. But I am not confused that I'm one hit away from total hell. So, while I was in this treatment center, they suggested that I get a sponsor. Well, there were 16 of us that were, I guess it was called transitional living. So, this was on a Wednesday. They said, all right, now next Wednesday, all of y'all need to come back with a sponsor, right? Well, there were 15 people with a sponsor. Do I need to tell you which one didn't have one? So they're going around the room, they're all talking about their sponsor. I'm glad I was the last one. He says, well, what about you, Barry? I said, well, I'm looking. I just ain't found one yet. I really wasn't looking because I didn't think I needed that. But he told me something, because I was starting to kind of like what I was becoming. Because the cobwebs were clearing. And he told me, he says, well, I'll tell you what. We're going to meet again here next Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And if you don't have a sponsor, your address is going to change. Now, I knew what that meant. You got to go. That night, I got a sponsor. That was probably the hardest thing I've had to do, was asking another man, can you help me? I remember being outside. It was after the meeting. That's when the meeting was at 8 o'clock. And we were standing out front, and it just wouldn't come out. You could have swore it was like a Beavis and Butthead cartoon, because I was going like, And he knew what I was. He just let me go through it, though. So I guess after about 15 minutes, it finally come out. I said, would you sponsor me? And I immediately, because I was waiting on the rejection. Because that's what I was used to, was being rejected. And he said it'd be an honor to sponsor you, but you're going to have to do some work. I said, work? Shit, I just need a sponsor so my address don't change. He says, no. You're going to have to do some work. I said, well, what I got to do? He says, well, first of all, I want you to call me every day. So I called him every day for like the next 3.5 years. He didn't tell me for how long. I just kept calling him. But what I didn't know was he was teaching me how to build a relationship. So my first relationship in Narcotics Anonymous was with another man, which was my sponsor. And we worked all 12 steps. You know, we went through them. It took right at 3.5 years. And I knew at the end of that it was time for me to move on, because we were headed in different directions. But there was, you know, like it says, we're not responsible for our disease, but we are responsible for our recovery. There was something inside of me saying, it's time to make a change, bro. So before I met Joe at the Louisiana Regional in 2009, in May. So I knew who I wanted to be my sponsor. But I knew first, out of respect, I couldn't ask him first. I had to go to my other sponsor and say, look. So that was probably the second hardest thing I ever had to do. It's like I was breaking up or something. How do you tell them like I'm moving on? You know? But I remember going and talking to him and telling him, you know, it's time that I move on. And I remember I was waiting on the rejection again. Do you know it took me 3 years in Narcotics Anonymous before I could accept a compliment without cringing? Like when someone would say something good about me, it would hurt. Like I would cower down and feel like worthless. Or think, what do you really want? Why are you telling me that? Now I wouldn't say that out loud, but I would be thinking it. What are you up to? Because see, that's where I come from. That's how I lived for so long. You know, all my so-called friends. So I changed sponsors. And I'm going to tell you what, man, that was my go-to guy. Because he had like so much living experience without using. Now, I'm going to tell you how my disease played a trick on me with Joe. He had 25 years clean. He got clean when he was 18. So my disease was telling me, man, he probably ain't even a real addict. Shit. So I called Joe one day, and I'm quizzing him on the slick side. Now, I don't just come straight out. I'm coming through the back door with it, you know, on the slick. Asking him about his drug use. Like that really mattered. And he told me. Here's where I never asked him that again was this, when he said the drug dealers kicked his mom and dad's door in and held him at gunpoint. I said, damn, he been where I've been. But here's what I was missing. At that time, he had 25 years of living experience without using. See, my disease skipped over that. Now I'm wanting to disqualify. And I'm going to tell you what. He helped me so much, man. Like, he probably called me more than I call him. Like 4 or 5 times a week. Always calling, you know. I was just checking on you, you know. Seeing what you up to. He dubbed me, he gave me 2 nicknames too. Knucklehead and Turbo. Because I always thought I had to be working on something, you know. So my first year working with him, he said, you're going to live all that bullshit you've been writing. That's what he told me. So for that first year of working with him, I had to start practicing. And I'm going to tell you what, that was a great time. Talk about some growing. Because I got to put into play. Because I always thought I had to be doing something, like writing, or some dope was going to fall out the sky or something. Or I was going to slip on it. You know? That's why I don't believe in slips. Relapse is relapse. I ain't never slipped on a U-100. That ain't never happened. It landed in my arm. And we got to work the steps too. You know? And I remember I was telling Jeremy earlier at the cabin on that back, in the back, because we're facing the Little Red River, and me and him have sat on there a couple of years running and went over step work. It's a beautiful time to go over step work, man. And we'd go early, it'd be cold. He said, come on, knucklehead. Let's go over that 4-step. You know, let's go over that, whatever it was at that time. Remember the 4-step here. So the steps, man. That's why I'm here today. If it wasn't for the steps, I wouldn't be standing here. Because meetings are great. I love meetings. And I'm going to like 6 a week. I was stuck on 2 for a little while. You know? Like, that was exhausting. So now I'm like stuck on 6. You know, addict, right? I get in that pattern. But the 6 is what I need right now. It might change later, but I'm comfortable with it. You know, I'm going to tell you something special is happening in Oxford, Mississippi right now with Narcotics Anonymous. Because, yeah, sorry, I keep moving this. I'm going to keep my hands in my pocket. And I'm comfortable with doing that too, because when I used to go to my aunts and stuff, I was the guy that had to sit on the couch with my hands in my pocket. I couldn't move. That's pretty sad. Or if I went down the hallway to the bathroom, they would be rubbernecking me to make sure I didn't dip off into one of the bedrooms. Hey, now they invite me over and I have my own room. They invite me and they are like clear out a whole room so I can come sleep with them. See, that's what the fellowship's done. You know, I remember not being welcome. And now they're calling me, asking me, when you coming? That's some pretty cool stuff, man. So, my sponsor died September of 2013. And I knew right then that I had to do something and do something quick. Because I haven't been in this fellowship without a sponsor. So, I called Jerry. I said, Jerry, man, I need a sponsor, man. I need someone to work these steps with. He says, I'm your guy. So he took me on. And now I know where Joe was getting a lot of that stuff from Jerry. You know, because it's just how it works, I guess. But, you know, me and Jerry have been able to work quite a few steps together since we've been working together. And now he's my go-to guy. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up for y'all. I know y'all probably ready to go. One thing that helped me with the steps was getting past that resentment with my dad. I remember Joe asking me one day, he says, well, how are you going to make that right? See, no one had ever asked me that before. How was I going to make it right? So addict brain is like computing stuff up, you know, real quick things I can do, and like one and done. I said, well, I guess I can write a letter. I can go to the grave and I can read the letter, you know, and that'll be the end. He says, man, that's such a great idea, but how you going to make it right? Well, he must have didn't hear me the first time. I said, sponsor, I'm going to write a letter. I'm going to go to the grave. I'm going to read the letter. And I think I said I'm going to burn the letter after that. He said, man, that's such a great idea. But how you going to make it right? See, now I'm starting to feel that feeling now. Like he ain't understanding me. So I got a little bit more assertive this time. I said, sponsor, I already told you what I'm going to do. I'm going to write the letter. Go to the grave, read it. Burn the letter. He said, man, he's so gloving. He said, that's such a good idea, but how are you going to make it right? I said, sponsor, what are you saying to me? He says, because it's not about what you write on the paper. It's about living. Living the amends. See, that's why sponsorship is so important. Because I couldn't come up with that on my own. Here's what he said. I said, well, what do I do? I don't know what to do, sponsor. He says, well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you some ideas. Because he never would really tell me what to do unless I was really getting off somewhere. He'll tell me cease and desist. And I know where he got that from because my sponsor now, that's what he tells me, cease and desist. Now. You fixing to get in trouble. But I listened today. I said, well, what do I do? He says, well, I'll tell you what you can do. He says, I want you to call all your local churches, all your mental health centers, and he says, I want you to make yourself available. He didn't just say churches, but other, places. Because there's some little boys in there that have those same resentments with step-parents. He says, I want you to make yourself available. Then he kicked it up a notch. He says, and when God shows up, don't say no. When they call, you go. And he says, and by the way, do it on your own dime. Don't take an annual day off. Do it on your time. See, he already cut me off from the beginning because he knew I would compute that quick. One more thing. Okay, I get nervous. So that's what sponsorship's done for me, is giving me ways and means to make things right. See, 4 and 5 were great, but I'm going to tell you what, the steps it's helped me, I mean, they all have, but see, 8 and 9, man, every time I get to make an amends, I can hold my head up just a little bit higher. Like every time, like it talks about, we can look another human being in the eye and be grateful for who we are. I can do that today. I don't have to look down or look around when I'm talking to people. But my mother, I need to tell you how I made it right with her before I close. One more thing about my dad. Today, I want to be just like him. Here's what I learned through the steps. All he ever tried to do was love me, nurture me, and provide for me. But I was the one that was rebellious on the inside. So the steps helped me get past that. You know? So if I could just be a little bit like that man was, you know, a man of integrity, just a loyal, loving, kind soul that would give his shirt off his back to anyone. That's what I want to do today, and that's what I'm striving for. Now, to my mother. She died February of last year. But when she died, I got a call from my sister. It was a voicemail, and I knew something was wrong because her voice was cracking to call. And I called, and she said Mom was dead. As soon as I hung up with her, the first person I called was my sponsor and told him what happened. See, back in the day, the first person I would have called was the dope man. Today, I call the hope man. And I told my sponsor, the second person I called was my job, my employer, and I told him what was going on. And Billy told me, take as much time off as you need. We got this. See, my little addict brain is like the place is not going to run without me. Shit. That place is going to do well if I'm there or not there. But, so, I start calling addicts. I live 5 hours or so from Oxford to Alexandria, Louisiana. I talk with addicts for 5 hours. All the way. I called and called and called and called, and I didn't know what to say, man. I just say, my mom died. I just need to talk to you right now. And when I would hang up or during a call, people were calling me. The word was getting out because y'all people showed up. Y'all started reaching out. Is that I'm here. Because you know there's really not, I don't know what to say except to say I'm here. And I talked to addicts all that time, all the way there. And I remember going and getting the arrangements and things together. And my mom died with a smile on her face. Because she got to see her son clean for 8 years before she died. She loved Narcotics Anonymous. My mother loved this fellowship. When I had 4 years clean, she come and stayed with me in Clarksdale. She said, son, would it be okay if I go with you to one of those meetings you're always talking about? I said, Mom, there's an open meeting tonight. You're welcome to attend. Look, Mainline. I need to start a group, Mainline. And I said, yeah. So we're driving to the meeting. I said, now, Mom, look, when we get to the meeting, don't try to share. Because she going to tell you about the God of her understanding. Okay? I said, don't try to share. She says, okay. So at the end of the meeting, we're fixing to close, and she asked the chairperson, is it okay if I say something? Now I'm thinking, oh no. We finna get Jade up in here. But look, she stood up. And I mean, she stood up like I'm standing up here right now looking at everybody here, and she said this. Thank y'all for giving me my son back. She says, I love this program that y'all call Narcotics Anonymous. And thank you for giving me my son back. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. There's about 30 addicts there that night. So when the meeting's over, they're all huddling up with Mom. I'm thinking they're going to come to me. Shit, they love it on Mom. Like the whole, like, rock star. You know, that's just my self-centered nature. Come to me. So man, Narcotics Anonymous is a lifesaver. One thing I have to do is stay plugged in, you know, because I know what happens when you pull life support on somebody. It's just a matter of time, and they're going to die. Sometimes real fast, and sometimes it lingers. So I stay plugged into y'all because y'all saved my life and gave me a life that I could have never imagined. You know, I am now a full-time college student again. Okay? 52-year-old college student, right? Metaphysical theology. I can't wait to delve into that. If you're curious about it, look it up. It's pretty cool. But Narcotics Anonymous, you know. I just purchased a home September last year. I've never bought a house, like brand new construction, never been lived in kind of house. I remember going to do the paperwork at the bank, and the lady run my credit, and she told me what I pre-qualified for, and I thought she had the wrong guy. Now, I didn't tell her, would you run it again? Because, you know, I've gotten past that. But I couldn't believe it, you know. But if I wouldn't have stayed here with y'all, where would I be? Because I believe the ends are always the same. Jails, institutions, and death. But on the flip side of that coin is called recovery. And for me, it's 100% Narcotics Anonymous. This is all I do. You know, this is all I need. I find everything I need. This is my honey hole. You know? So, I think I'm going to go ahead and say good night to y'all. Thank y'all for letting me share, and I love y'all.